we'll cover chapter 7. So chapter 7, markup languages. I do know that some of you have already taken or are taking programming languages right now, but if you think about HTML, it's really not considered a programming language. It is a markup language. So when I create the tags like I do, like head and body, those are tags, so it's not really a programming language. When we go into JavaScript, or we start adding JavaScript and, and doing a canvas thing, there's actually something within HTML called canvas, and it's very related to Java, or it's Java. So that's another thing that you'll have to like make straight in your mind. Just like I mentioned, there's head, heading, and header. Well, there's Canvas, the learning management system that you use to access the course. This here is Canvas, but then there's also something called Canvas in HTML where you can create some cool graphics. So that's going to be a cool chapter there too. Okay, so back to the text. So markup languages again, it's really just a notation of different sections. So the textbook uses the example of using a highlighter. So basically when you create tags, you're saying, well, this section does this. So this is kind of like highlighting that area, saying, okay, this part's going to be bigger, this part's going to be not so big, that kind of thing. So it's just where you're labeling different areas. Okay, so popular markup languages is one of the things is going to be HTML that we're doing in this class. There's extensible markup language, XML. I mentioned that earlier or in a previous course, and I believe, yeah, this is the example here. I haven't saved it, so there's no colors. The IDE or the program doesn't know exactly what to do with it, so that's why there's no colors. Actually, let's go ahead and do file save as. Let's see if I could choose. Okay, no, it doesn't say extensible markup language. So then I would go ahead and look here, and there, whoop, nope, it doesn't have it here. So I'm just going to go ahead and put all types, and then do XML or my XML.xml, save, and now we have colors. Yay. Okay, so here's basically the XML that was in a previous chapter. And notice how it looks like HTML, what we've done so far. It has tags, it has more tags inside of those tags, it's indented, it has different properties here. But does anybody remember the difference between XML and HTML? I know I mentioned that previously. Well, the difference between XML and HTML is that, let's see, I know it says it in the book. I might be going ahead of myself though. Oh yeah, I am getting ahead of myself, but that's fine. XML basically has its user-defined tags. HTML, you have to use the tags that's available in HTML. So if you're looking at HTML code like this here, and also I didn't even realize too, but this is all black text because I haven't saved it yet. So let me go ahead and save this. And I am going to say sample.html. Always remember to change this because see how it says normal text file? It will actually add .txt at the end here, and then it's really just a text file. So very important that you change it to the hypertext markup language. And now we have colors. Okay, so where was I? Okay, so HTML and XML, what's the difference? HTML has tags that you have to use. You cannot change HTML. You cannot change head. You can't just make up a tag because you want to. You can't just say, George, this is a tag. No, not going to happen. But when it comes to XML, you can create a tag. So if I do George, notice how it gave me the colors. It allowed me to create a tag called George. So that's the difference. So the main difference is that XML, you can create, or it's called user-defined tags. Then in HTML, you have to use the tags that are there, or that are available or given, however you want to say that. Okay. And then we have extensible hypertext markup language, which is really just a combination of the two. You can use HTML, but then you can also create tags on your own. You know, there's different reasons why you might want to do that. Okay. So HTML5, I've been saying HTML, but really what I'm referring to is HTML5. Of course, kind of just like, when you say Microsoft Word, you're not going to say the specific version of it, or your Microsoft Office, you're not going to say what version you have unless you have to. There's a reason to say, because somebody asks you what version do you have, but typically you're just going to say, Mac or Windows or whatever. So I typically just say HTML, but we're really using HTML5. And, if I reuse this video in the future, it may increase to HTML6. So at this point, it's HTML5. And actually, to tell you the truth, this last sentence down here actually mentions that it's still in draft form, but it's not. It's actually the current form now. So with technology, things get outdated. That's just a thing. And of course, there's a lot of things that do, like music and stuff. Anyway, HTML5, basically you can do so many different things with it. You can do tables, you can do forms, lists, headings, you can embed videos, audio, documents like PDFs and spreadsheets. So many different things that you can do with HTML. And I'm sure you're familiar with it because, you've seen web pages, you know that there's forms, you've done a search on Google. That is a form. So, and I just want to illustrate what I'm talking about. Go to google.com. This input box is a form. And then you push a button, that's part of a form too. Anytime you log into your bank, you're filling out a form. So there's HTML tags to create that form for you. We talked about headings, that H1, H2, just like this heading here. Tables, we'll see that later, but basically tables, just like you would create a table in Microsoft Word, you can also create a table with HTML. So insert table, there's a table in Microsoft Word. So you can actually create tables using HTML, and we will do that in a future chapter. Okay, and of course, you've all watched things on YouTube. There's audio files. I know there's different websites, and I know I might be talking about old ones, but Pandora is one thing. There's just so many different audio places you can go. And then of course you can embed PDFs and spreadsheets, and I don't have anything embedded, I think. Well, actually, if you go into the Canvas page and you click on course syllabus, this is a perfect example of a PDF embedded. So we're looking at a web page, but here's an embedded PDF on the web page. So that's just an example of what they're mentioning here. And you can embed spreadsheets and stuff like that. And just so you know what embed is, just so I can make sure that you know what it is embed just means having something within something. So this image right here on the web page, that is embedded on the web page. It's just in it. So then, just like I showed the syllabus here, there's a PDF embedded in this web page here. Okay, I mean, you can have like links like the Zoom address here, but that's not really embedded. It's just a link to maybe a PDF or something else. Okay, so let's talk about the history of HTML. And okay, so the history of HTML, and just like we mentioned when it came to the history of the internet, there was universities and there was the government. They needed a way to communicate. Well, it's really great to be able to share files or even to share information. And that was a really good reason for creating HTML. Now remember that basically accessing the accessing websites was really data driven. It just looked like, text. And actually, when I search for telnet, usually that'll give me a good image of what it used to look like when we were searching. Oh, well, yeah, I guess just it looks like DOS, really. Or when you're doing a non-Windows access. But yeah, that's how I used to surf the internet when my university first got it. I was doing web pages like this. There were no images. And you probably read that within my introduction. But anyway, so this is how we access the internet. So after just doing that kind of thing, well, then, with universities and government, well, sharing images would be really great too. So then, they started creating HTML tags and, we had browsers. So now we can not only share just text, but we can also share images of things. And, that it makes a lot of sense a lot of times. You want to share a chart that you created or something like that. Anyway. So, yeah, so from the very beginning, you're just looking at information. So you really only need like the headings, maybe a bulleted list or some tables, color. That's pretty much it. But, everything improves, specifically with technology. So then they started, adding the ability to interact with the pages. So then we're talking about, again, doing forms so we can log into our banks, we can access those databases, retrieve all the payments that you've made and all your income through a table on the server of your bank. So, and then of course, but even before that, we would do tables to make layouts and stuff to make things look good. But now we just kind of realize that really wasn't such a good idea. But we work with what we have, and then we just keep on making things better as we can. Always improving, I really like to say. Okay, so current state, I kind of already mentioned that, is that, we're using forms now. I mentioned earlier that there's Canvas, not only the Canvas that we're using to access this class, but there's also Canvas where you can use JavaScript to create graphics. And then, of course, media support, which would be videos and audio. And previously, we would have to do, extra things just to have that happen. But now with HTML5, you don't have to do so much. And one thing that it really doesn't mention, I'm sure it mentions it later, but one cool thing about HTML5 is that the forms that you create actually check things without doing a lot of work. So, like, let's say you log into your bank, you have an input field. So then you type in your username. Well, if the username needed to be an email address, you can create HTML5 to say, well, it needs to look like an email address. So the web page that you create is checking to see if it has that @ sign. Instead of sending the information to the bank and then the bank server checks it and then comes back, it's just so much quicker to check it right at the web page that you're on. So that's actually part of HTML5. It actually checks the data that's entered into the input boxes. So that's a real benefit too. Oh, right. I mentioned earlier that HTML and XHTML, they are fixed or predefined. You cannot create them yourself. And then XML, they're defined by the user. So yeah, that's the difference again. Okay, W3C, or known, which is also known as the World Wide Web Consortium. And they are an international community that supports web development through the creation of open standards that provide the best user experience possible for the widest audience of users. I had to read that because that's pretty important. And basically what that is it is a group of professionals and experts that basically work together to make sure that we find the best way to provide these web pages. So, if kind of like when we were talking about the staffing styles, you can work on something on your own, or you can work on something as a team or 2 people paired. If it's just one person can't cover everything. I mean, you can't know everything. I mean, with experience, you may be pretty good, but even when you have experience, there's always something new coming up. So, the new person in the company can add more stuff. So it's a good idea that people work together and there's different opinions of how things should be done. So it's really good when a group comes together to decide what would be the best way of doing things. And also you want a standard as well. So if everybody's doing things differently, however they want to do it, kind of like dealing with let's just say a virus situation. If there was a virus going on now and every state had to figure out what they had to do, instead of coming together and deciding what would be the best thing and making a real plan, then things just don't really work out right. So it's always a good idea to, come together and say, okay, this is the standards. This is what we all agree should work. So yeah. So anyway, that's what the World Wide Web Consortium is, but not with the virus, with the standards on the web. And if you go to that website link, I actually have it open here already. And I was talking about it here earlier, because we were talking about the header and headings and all that stuff. There's just so much important information here. And here's the accessibility part, but there's also a security section as well. You know, there's just so much information. Here's web security. So if you want to be more knowledgeable about that area, maybe that's your major, you can just access this web page to find more information. The more you know, the better, the more marketable you are. Okay. All right, so that's yeah, and so I talked about accessibility. What exactly is accessibility? Well, it's you know, we have to be aware of, you know, issues that people have. Nobody is perfect. So you might have an issue with your eyesight. Well, if you have an issue with your eyesight, how can you view the web page? Does that mean that if you have issues with your eyesight, you just can't view the internet? No, we need to have everybody with the ability to access things equally. So, so for example, if you are visually impaired, there are things that you can do to help you look at the content. So, for example, it really doesn't talk about it here, but there are some programs. If you are visually impaired, there are programs that you can purchase for your computer so that it reads things for you. And actually, to tell you the truth, Windows does it. Well, there's a lot of different things that has accessibility capabilities, just like your cell phone. But Windows does have the ability to read things on your computer, and so you can choose what you want to click on. It'll help you work with Windows. It'll help you work with browsers. So you, instead of, you know, clicking on something, you can pretty much just tell it, you know, just like you have a Echo Dot or the Google option, whatever that's called, you can just speak to it and then the computer will do something, or, you know, just like your cell phone. All right. So anyway, so what they mention here is alternate text. And so with images, you could, I haven't seen any images recently, but let's go ahead and most likely this is an image. And if I hover over that image, come on now, I'm pretty sure that's an image. What is it, text? Oh, I was just focusing on being a link. Okay, so it's not showing me. That's not cool. Here, maybe that one. There we go. So if you see that I hovered over that Twitter bird, it actually has text underneath it that says follow W3C on Twitter. So that is actually called alt text or alternate text. So to make your web page accessible, you want to make sure that any images that you have has that alt text. In addition to that, something that would make a web page accessible, or let's just say videos in general, like what you're watching now, you need it to be closed captioned. I'm sorry, closed captioned. So that way, you know, in case, you know, somebody, you know, is impaired with their hearing, they can just read what's on the screen. So that's just another way of accessibility. All right, so, you know, there's on that website, there's tutorials, examples, so many things, so much information that you can access. And the more you know, again, the more marketable you are in your field. Okay, let's see. So CSS is something that we are going to cover after we do some work in HTML. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And, or you might just have cascading style sheet, just one. Okay, so there's different ways of having cascading style sheets. So it really doesn't mean sheet, like there's a sheet of paper for it. You can create a file that has all your CSS, and you could just have a section in your page that has CSS. And basically what you have CSS for is to create rules about the color, font, and layout of your pages. Because remember, when you're creating a website for a company, all the web pages need to be cohesive. They need to be, similar. They need to make it seem like you're on the same site instead of making all the the homepage blue, one link, pink, the other pink, green, it's just not cohesive. And of course, it needs to be professional, and making those pages similar would make it look professional. Okay, so just a real quick thing I want to show you real quick about CSS is that, okay, so here is, actually, let me just get rid of a lot of this stuff. Okay, so this would be a very basic web page, and I'm just going to get rid of these tags. So remember, there's HTML, there's head, there's body, and then there's title. We looked at that a little bit, but notice how there's style tags and they're inside of the head tags. So again, when they're in the head tags, they're not going to be showing on the web page. They're for information only. So this is where the styles are defined. So let's say you want some text that has a background color of yellow, then you're going to assign this style to that text. Or if you wanted that text to have a background color of red, then you're going to assign this style to that text. So that's basically, a very basic representation of what CSS looks like. And, certain text, not only can you change the background color, you can change the actual color of the text. Remember, you can change the color of font. So many different things you can change, so it'll just be listed down here. So then you can press enter and say font color or something like that, font family, font size, so many different options here. But we won't cover that until we cover those chapters. But for now, this is what cascading style sheets looks like. Another thing to be important, I've already mentioned that it's important to have the tags. So there's the angle bracket, there's the slash here. Those are important. But notice how now styles has a little bit more. We have your pound sign, we have curly braces, we have a colon. These hyphens need to be there. Very important. Semicolon. Those are even, there's even more special characters that we need to use in CSS. So very important for you to, get used to being very specific about those special characters now. So, so it'll be easier when we move on. Okay, so okay, so it mentions, yeah, I won't do that. Oh, okay, I see. So, so the one thing, basically, to have it, to kind of separate them in your mind, well, why use HTML or why use CSS? Well, think of this. HTML is just to define the structure, how everything's going to be laid out. Then you're going to use cascading style sheets, and that's where you focus on the actual styles, or like fonts, colors, that kind of thing. Responsive is when you and I know it was at the end of like chapter 6, but we really didn't cover it. Adaptive or adapt or responsive web pages will actually change depending on the size of the device that you're looking at. So you can go to a website and you can view a web page, and that's fine on your laptop. But then when it comes to viewing the same web page on a cell phone or a tablet, well, your cell phone is going to be smaller. So we need to create our web pages so it will adapt to whatever you're using. And that's called responsive pages. And so what does it mean by adapting? That means that if you, let's say your web page has lots of graphics or maybe even ads, well, if you see that it's a tablet or a cell phone, it'll get rid of those extra things. It recognizes that it's a smaller screen, and it'll just get rid of stuff, or it'll even move stuff. So that's what it means by layout when it comes to layout of your pages using CSS. You can actually change, like you may have 3 images next to each other, and actually let me go ahead and show you an example real quick. So if I just had, and I'm going to insert a few pictures, but I don't really have any. So I'm going to go on the web, or actually not even that. I can do shapes. So I'm going to create, ooh, this might not even work. I'll make it work. Okay, so I'm going to create 3 different shapes. And let's say that these are images on a web page. Okay, so I have a square, a circle, and a triangle. And these are 3 different images on a web page. And if you're looking at a laptop, this should look fine. But if, let's say you're looking at this on a web page on your cell phone, this may not be, or this may be too much. So to make it so that you can read it, because a web page would just have really small font and you would need to zoom in, but automatically you would want your cell phone to make the text larger, and maybe the images will adapt automatically by putting the image on the bottom so that you'd have to scroll down because there's just not enough space going across. So that might happen on a tablet where just one of them is moved down. But if you're using a cell phone, well, that's even smaller. So all 3 of them may be, vertically aligned like this, instead of looking at it as on the same line on a laptop. So it automatically adapts to whatever you have on your, or whatever device you're using. So that's what it means by layout. So structure is, I guess, just the different sections of what there is. There's a head on the top, then there's the body, and then within the body, there's a header and a footer. So that would be the structure. Okay, let's see. So anyway, history of CSS, it's we haven't really covered so much of what you would have to do within a web page, but let me go ahead and show you what we would have to do. Okay, so previously, if you wanted a font or a font color, you would have to do it like this, something, well, like that. Okay, and so this would be text. Oops. Okay, so every time you would need, like maybe a title would be red, and then font color, and the content underneath, the yellow is bad. The content underneath would have to be blue. You would have to type in all of these. Oops, and I put text instead of font. You would have to type in these tags every single time you wanted another text color. So all of your titles would be this and all of your titles would be that. So then you would have to, copy and paste. Okay, well, copy and paste is really helpful in this situation. But what if you had not just one page, you had 100 web pages on your website? Do you want to go in and change, let's say instead of red, well, you really wanted it purple? You would have to change this on every single page individually. Or maybe you could do a search. And of course, just like things, we're always improving. So, at first, we were just working with black and white, pretty much web pages. But then we're like, hey, let's try to change color. So then we created this font color option. So that improved it a bit because now we have color, but now we have to go through and change, each one of these tags individually. So then there were, they created programs where it'll do the code for you, and you wouldn't exactly have to type everything, all of this stuff. Does anybody know or remember what programs were created? What were the names of those programs that would actually create this code for you? And basically what would happen is you would actually have something like, let me go ahead and get rid of these. You would actually have like a division, and let me do a split window in Microsoft Word. So you would actually have a division like this. So on the top, you would actually, let's say you would type hello, but then on the bottom, you would actually have the actual code. So down here, instead of just showing hello, it would actually have something like, it would have body and then hello. It would actually have the HTML on the bottom. So of course it would have the close HTML and then the open HTML. So on here, it would show you what the web page would look like, and you can just type it in and automatically the program would create the code for you. And there's still programs out there that will do that for you. And just so you know, we have to know how to look at the code and evaluate it and change it, because there are so many different situations where you might need to. So, and even if you were to use this program, yes, it'll create it for you. It might be a bit easier and quicker, but sometimes you just really have to go back in the code because it's just not creating it correctly. And there was, even the programs that were out there, it just wouldn't come out right totally. So, and then it would be really complicated to fix it. But one of them, I even kind of forgot now. I think it was called Front Page, and that was the Microsoft version of it. It's probably not even going to show. Yeah, Front Page. There it is. Yeah, and that was pretty. It was difficult to get anything really nice together using Front Page, but yeah, it's discontinued there. And Wysiwyg just means what you see is what you get. So it was creating the HTML for you. Another one that I'm not even sure if Dreamweaver is the one that was, I forgot who created it, but Adobe bought it, but I don't think it's still available. Maybe it is. But anyway, those were programs that you can use to create HTML, or it actually would create HTML for you, but still wasn't a good idea because, well, I mean, I guess opinions matter, but still you have to know the code. So, because nothing is perfect. So that's why we're doing this in this class. Okay, so anyway, So that's what it would look like front page. You just type something here and then it would automatically create the code for you. Okay. Anyway, and to go back, so that was one improvement. So at some point we added colors, we had these tags, then an improvement was creating these programs like Front Page and Dreamweaver so that it would create it for you. And then of course, most recently an improvement is CSS, where you can actually create, I guess, the code to edit lots of stuff at one time. So then, as I showed earlier, we have style tags where you can actually put the CSS in. So now we would have something like title color, and this is not what the formatting is because I don't really want to go into that, but the title color would always be purple, and the text color would always be blue. So then instead of actually putting purple in here, you would just say that, so this text here, it would just be that you're going to be using the title color stuff. So instead of saying purple here, it's just going to say title. And then here it's just going to say text. So anything that says title, it's going to be purple. Anything that says text is going to be blue. So that's a bit more of a explanation of how CSS works. But that just makes it so much easier. Instead of having to change purple, 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 and blue, 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 you can just do it once here and just assign which one it's going to use in your text. And then another thing when it comes to CSS is that, well, this is really great when you only have one web page. Well, what if you have 100 web pages? Will you have to change this 100 times because you have 100 web pages? Well, you don't have to, because there's external style sheets that'll affect all those 100 web pages. And I don't want to go into that because I think I'm going a little bit too far on this topic for now. We will cover that later on in a few weeks. Okay, so anyway, so yeah, okay, so we just started to save time. CSS was created to save the time and change stuff. Now it mentions here again how we want to make our web pages appear more like newspapers or magazines. Remember we talked about the fold. Well, one thing that it doesn't really mention in here is that, well, first of all, you might be thinking, well, why do they keep on talking about, websites having to look like magazines, or why are they talking about the fold all the time? Well, when it comes to, maybe it's a marketing thing, but I wouldn't exactly know why. I just know these things. But anyway, there are different, I guess you could even call them like standards, or just things that people have realized helps in different situations. So for example, one thing that I'm aware of is that, it's hard to keep somebody's focus when there's such a large, let's just say it's a large paragraph. So, there's this big paragraph here about history, and, I've highlighted sections within it because, it just it makes it just seems like more work to have a big paragraph like this than just different sections like this. So, if you're thinking about making a list of something, it's better to actually make bullets instead of, having a big paragraph like this. So, it's just an awareness of how to keep somebody on your web page. So, they've already thought about these types of things when it comes to newspapers or magazines, and you can apply those kinds of ideas to your web pages. So, think about maybe when you're searching on the web and you see that there's these huge paragraphs, you don't really want to read it. And that's actually one of the reasons why I like this book or this text, because yes, it has paragraphs, but it's not like really extensive, because then that just makes it hard on you to you know uh, keep your attention. Another thing too about newspapers that I'm aware of, and I'm sure there's so many more because I'm not a marketing person, but when it comes to newspapers, if you let's see if I can find an image of newspapers. You might even kind of realize too. Okay, so let's look at this newspaper here. Notice how it doesn't have like a title. I should probably make sure that this is not bad content. Not that this would be bad content, but okay. Yeah, this might be better. I don't want any images. Okay, so notice how there's different sections. There's a column here, there's a column here, there's a column here. That's actually one of the practices as well, because something about having 3 inches of text makes it, I forgot what they would say, like look better or easier to read for the user. So yeah, the same when it comes to web pages as well. There's different sections. Notice how this web page here, there's a section on the left, there's a section to the right. They don't have, they still have columns even within that text. So there's just different practices. And of course you can get it from this web page or, other things, but that's just, the reason why they refer to newspapers is because they're just, I guess, tried and true things to keep your user's attention. Anyway, let's see. So yeah, here they talk about how CSS2, they talked a little bit about the history, of course, and CSS2 actually allowed the adaptation of the web pages depending on the different displays, and that's responsive pages, as we discussed before. Okay, and the current state of CSS, they basically refer to it as CSS3, but they're not really focusing on the different versions like other things. Okay, the DOM, or Document Object Model, real quick is, but you do need to, just be sure you know what it is, but it's not too big of a deal, or I really don't focus on it. It's the ability to manipulate and create web pages consistently. So again, we're looking at standards. So this is the object model of the way web pages should look. So as you can see, it has HTML, we have your head, you have your body, just the different things inside of it. So it just determines, the structure of, how things are. So, again, think about, you're working with people, you may start, or you may get a job where the web pages are already created and you just need to edit them. Now, it would be difficult to edit somebody's page if somebody decided to put the head on the bottom and the body on the top. You're looking for the head, but it's not there. But, you don't want to have to go searching around for things. You want to know that, web pages are always going to have the structure of the head on the top and then the body underneath. So that's basically, the DOM pretty much defines the order and the structure of the files. Again, we just want to make it easier for everybody to work with. Okay, so that was chapter 7. Chapter 8 is only 2 pages, so it's not really going to be too bad. So let's go ahead and stop here for a second. Okay, so that is the end of chapter 7. So the next video is going to be on chapter 8.